So you guys already heard a little bit from him, and you'll all see who is up here. So we have Matt today. He is actually one of the best email marketers I know.
Sweet!
Also at Zumiez. His presentation is so fun. I think you'll hear a lot of great insights and just what goes on into creating really effective email campaigns. I think it's also fun too if you guys are subscribers of Zumiez emails. You kind of understand what goes on behind the scenes and like why you get some emails versus not others, how he personalizes, and kind of how he manages sending millions and millions of emails. I don't know what your count is at this point.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's too many.
But let's welcome Matt to class.
Cool. Hey everybody, Matt Griffin. As Jen mentioned, I'm email marketing at Zumiez. Been there about 3 years. I've been in email marketing specifically for about 9. Before that, I worked at a place called Real Networks, but then spun into Rhapsody, which is now Napster. Left there about 5 years ago. Went on to email market for a little company called Liquid Planner. They do project planning software, much like your Trellos, your Basecamps, that type of thing. That was boring as hell. So I moved on to Zumiez, which I've sort of found my niche. Definitely was a Zumiez kid growing up, so it was a market and an audience that I was kind of used to being. So what I'm going to go over tonight is just sort of a basic understanding of what email marketing is, how you manage your brand, sending, testing, reporting, a day in the life of what I do, and then we'll take questions at the end. Open forum. If you guys, if I'm talking too fast, let me know. If you have a question, pipe up. I'm sure everyone else will benefit from just the knowledge that you're seeking. Once again, Matt Griffin, email marketing manager. I do everything related to email marketing, so that goes from the data side to development to QA testing and reporting. Soup to nuts, I believe is what they call that. Zumiez started in 1978 at the Northgate Mall as Above the Belt. Not a lot of people know that. We changed to Zumiez in '93, operating in US and Canada and in Europe as Blue Tomato, and we just acquired a company called Fast Times in Australia. Only about 5 stores, but we're topping about 670 locations worldwide. So that's an old metric. Events, we have things called Best Foot Forward, Zumiez Presents, Couch Tour. These are our brand marketing, customer-facing, experiential events that sort of break us apart from your normal retailers like your PacSuns and whatnot. People tend to lump us. We don't like to be lumped. Let's talk about email marketing. The future is now, and it is bright. Wait, email's dead, right? Nope, I'm gonna have to go against that. So the reason why email is pretty amazing, and the reason why I sort of made a career about it, is that everybody has an email address. I don't know if you know anybody who doesn't have one. They're likely living under a rock. They probably have multiple too. It's targetable. I can know who I'm sending my emails to. I can measure it. So unlike a billboard with millions of eyes passing, you actually know what your reach, your audience, and your effectiveness is. It's evolving. It's always changing. Inboxes, ISPs, rules, deliverability, all that stuff is always evolving, so you got to stay in the know. SEO is governed by Google, so you kind of just have to play by their rules. It's a valuable piece of any marketing mix, so you guys have probably touched on it. Email is a part of any promotional strategy. If you're not using email, it's likely strategic, but it's rare. So we're going to go from beginning to end. Data acquisition, legal compliance, sender score and reputation, data management. Now this all sounds pretty boring, and it is, but you must know sort of the basics and where all email starts, and it's with data. It's with customer data acquisition. So there are a couple ways to get user data. You can get it organically through your website. Thought leadership, a lot of people use white papers, things of that sort that are sort of like a goodwill outreach that you give me your email address, I'll give you these learnings. Media, content, get this MP3, give me your email address, that type of thing. Brick and mortar, we have a very strong store team that operate on behalf of Zumiez in all of our stores. We have a very strong sales culture, and we sort of rely on that to fill the funnel. A lot of stores actually suffer greatly from filling the top of the funnel, and that's something we do very well. You got your things like events and then affiliates. So do you have any partners or other lists that you can optimize and or sort of attain just because of legal agreements that you have. Paid side of things, you've got digital ads. I'm sure you guys have all seen those. There's new like lead generating ads you may have seen on Facebook, which it looks like a normal post, but it's actually like, give me your email, we'll give you 15% off. Those are highly targeted digital points of data acquisition. And then you have list purchasing. If any of you guys list purchase, I would recommend to not do it. There's just so many bad things that can happen with list purchasing. It's the first thing a lot of companies want to do to grow their lists, but brokers have no tie to your business. So if you crash and burn, they don't care. So we'll go into that and why it's really important to be very, very careful of who you're sending your emails to and how you acquire those emails. Can spam, who's ever heard of this? We got a couple, okay. Can spam is our anti-spam legislation. Essentially says you can't send illicit material to people that didn't sign up for your stuff. So it's enforced by the FTC. There are violations or penalties if you go against it. That'd be all of those phishing scams, all that stuff you see in your junk mail, likely enforceable through this law, but they're such small fish and likely so hard to catch they don't. But what they are doing is illegal. So, if for some reason you see that there's a reputable brand illegally mailing you and you feel like you're being damaged because of it, welcome to America. People who violate use deceptive tactics, misleading information, or have no opt-out option. So they sort of bring you into a vortex of never leaving. Canada has very similar legislation. They've just started enforcing that up there. They care a lot more about their customers. I shouldn't say customers. Their what do you call those guys, subscribers. But it's more just a protection for all of their citizens that they only be communicated to by companies that they have actually signed up for. It'd be amazing if we did the same here, but we would have trouble enforcing that, I'd imagine. Must be able to prove point of opt-in and language, date, time. It's essentially just proof that they signed up for your email lists. Now, how to stay compliant? You got to be specific about who's sending the email. So the from name has to be, as always, from Zumiez from us, Zumiez.com from us. Your businesses will obviously change as you have different names and domains. Don't send scams or things that are deceiving. Have a way to people opt out. And like I said, don't acquire email addresses from other sources that are not your own. There is underlying technologies, or I should say, authentication measures that are put on your website that allow ISPs to verify that the email that's coming through from your domain is actually from Zumiez. So what we have to do is if we say, hey, this is coming from Zumiez.com, we actually have to go onto our website and put these records or these identifiers in our code. Small snippet of code, it's not heavy, it just sort of sits there and all it does is just checks. And so when the ISP goes to say, hey, is this like a real person? Is this a real company? They touch your website, find that key, it validates, verifies, and then they allow your inbox to then receive whatever emails are coming through. Reputation, sender score, deliverability. Believe it or not, if you are a crappy marketer, you will get penalized for it. So what your sender score is, it's dictated by your reputation. And reputation is evaluated by how much you send, how many people complain about your emails. And a complaint isn't like going to the company and complaining through HR. It's unsubscribing without opening. It is marking as spam. That's usually the biggest one. A lot of people equate marking as spam as unsubscribes. Very different. That's actually damaging to the reputation for a mark as spam. So even if you're marking as spam for Apple, it's hurting their reputation. If it's something you want to do to be malicious to a company you hate, go for it. But I would recommend unsubscribing, and that would just be the real way to go about that. We're going to go through what natural sort of data process is and where we get stuff. So customer information starts from a number of different things. You have website activity, you have things that they may have done on your website, download a white paper, purchase something, sign up for a service, those types of things. That then feeds the circle. We are able to then take that data, do something with it, And all of these then sort of feed back into segmentation, right? So all of the activities you do in marketing emails or on the website, or heck, if you register a code off our catalog, I know you open the catalog. And so these are all the things that we can take as data points and start to tailor our messaging accordingly. Data can be very cumbersome too. You can have, they call it data paralysis, where it's just like, I have so much data, I don't know what to do with it, so no one does anything. It's important that if you are collecting data, that you're collecting meaningful data and data that you can actually pivot off of. Otherwise, it's just going to go into the ether and be a waste of time for everyone. Going back to preference center, so this is what this is sort of a inferred way of capturing people's preferences, but it also gives you really good data. If you have different types of email, people specifically telling you, I want these emails, is a really good thing to know. A lot of people will take those and not actually do anything with your preferences, so know that sometimes whatever you click isn't actually working. But you can collect things like frequency, mail type, location, date of birth, brands, things you're into, days a week. These are really, really common, but unfortunately, a lot of people would say they go used at maybe 5%, of their audience use the preference center. So some people will spend months building an amazing preference center that nobody uses. So just be sure that if you're going to build one, someone will use it. The idea with a preference center is to get people to opt down, not out. So they're still on your lists. They may have thinned out what they want from you, but that's a good thing, right? If someone's telling you they don't want anything, you're not wasting money sending them that stuff. Same with an unsubscribe. Depending on how fast you're filling the funnel, unsubscribe can be a hard thing to take, but if it's someone who just doesn't want your email, good, move on. Let's get another person. So email marketers are watching. That sounds super creepy, kind of is. It's a lot of people are very surprised at what advertisements, follow-up ads they'll see across the web as they move from a abandoned cart through, and that product just follows them. Now, we're kind of on the same, email's kind of on the same track in that, as I mentioned, it's measurable. So I can see who opens, who clicks, what they clicked on. Did they view or purchase any items? How much was it? Have they visited before? Campaign revenue, conversions. So average order value, version tested. So all of these things are not only measurable, but I can track them and report back on them. And the way that I can do that is sort of going on behind the scenes on the URL strings that not a lot of people see. So in the HTML code, this right here before the question mark, that's actually the only part of the URL that drives you to a location. All of that stuff following down to this last quotation is all my tracking your every move. And what I'm actually doing is a number of different things in this. And it's really not, it's not bad. I feed through what data I know about you so that it follows you through whatever engagement activity you make, and then it just bolsters the amount of data that we have on the back end. So what I'm looking at here is, where is it coming from? List track is our ESP, so it's coming from them. What channel? Email. And then it goes down to the campaign. So that's a date code, tells me who got it. So then we got their encoded email address, their personal identifier, what segment scores they have. So we have things like, are they a fashion leader, fashion follower, lagger, sale only, those types of things. I guess what I'm getting at is I'm pumping a lot of data through. So when you're clicking on a link, I'm looking at everything. Not a lot of companies do this extensive of tracking because they don't have the capabilities of reporting on it. So it's not everybody, but it's something that happens.
How do you collect those information?
Yeah, so this goes all into Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is our primary data tool. So what this does, we have pixels on our website that then measure all incoming traffic, realize where they're coming from, and this is why I put these little codes up here. So it tells the website, hey, this guy's coming from email, they came from this campaign and this source, and that way I can go into Google Analytics and say, I want to look at all the people who are from the email channel that opened this specific campaign and clicked on this ad content or this piece of creative. I can then find those people and follow up with them. Yeah?
Does incognito mode work for these days?
Incognito mode will still serve this data to us, but it's not going to live beyond that session. So it still exists in that vacuum, but that cookie dies with that tab. So you're a little bit more secretive in that we won't be able to track like where you go and what you're doing afterwards, but yeah, we can still see it. So that's the close of the technical side. Moving on to the other part of things, the art and science of email, brand perception. I believe it's all about the little things, inbox presentation. So what I mean by that is how your email looks in comparison in the inbox. Are you using all caps? How many emojis are you using? Is it too much? Are your keywords being called out? Do your subject lines actually some people will use mysterious subject lines that make you click. Some direct subject lines work better. Pre-header copy. Pre-header copy is that line of text that shows underneath the subject line in your inbox. It sort of tells what's in the email, gives a little bit more detail. All of these things, mobile experience, frequency, message types, all of those sort of make a person perceive a brand in a certain way. If you over-communicate, if you send the wrong thing all the time, that can instantly go to a negative. If you send the right things at the right time, it goes to a positive. Don't be annoying is another thing. If you're like me, this is what your inbox kind of looks like, right? I mean, just kind of sift through it and figure out what makes sense, what doesn't. It's crowded like a bus, and then you cry. So what makes you open? And this is data that I pulled from other sources and things that I've seen work for us in particular, but it's short and sweet, personalization, concise language, don't run on, keep your promise. That's just the idea of no baiting and switching, no smoke and mirrors. Just try to be straightforward. People appreciate it. Urgency, which is the idea of get it now before we're out. Product's going fast. It's rare that they're actually going fast. Numbers, questions. So that would be in like the subject line. You would ask like, are you wearing the right coat for this weather? Instead of we have parkas. You know, there's a different way to go about that. And then humor. So people appreciate funny. There's some really good email marketers out there that are doing a really good job of that. Shinesty's one that I just love.
Question, on subject lines, what do you think about emojis?
It's totally dependent on your brand. If you are and I'm just gonna throw out like industries and professions, like if you're I don't know, I wanna say like a dentist's office or something, I wouldn't go with emojis. If you're like if you're a very serious product or business, emojis likely aren't in your suite of things you should be using. If you're a teen retailer who literally, I'm sure they can communicate in emojis alone, it can actually resonate very, very well. We've done quite a bit of testing with emojis, and we can get upwards of 15, 20% lift difference between the two emails. But we use them sparingly because I'm sort of drawing conclusions. But if you use an email emoji every single time, it's not going to do the same thing. So it's really saving your ammunition and making sure you use it at the right or appropriate times. 420 for us, right? Like put a smoke cloud in there, right? That's huge. That's just worked out for us. I've pulled a couple of designs that of retailers that I like, and I just wanted to sort of showcase these. You guys probably get a plethora of different emails from companies you like, things that companies that you follow and that do well. I just want to show like how brand perception sort of plays into design and photography, very detailed imagery drive engagement. If you put a full email all text, likelihood of engagement's low. People react to pictures, so sort of telling that story and communicating in pictures is very effective in email. It's one of the channels where it makes most sense.
What do you think about really long emails versus really short emails?
So I think it depends on really what you're going for. If you have a single story that you want and you don't want to distract from that message, for one example would be a shopping cart abandoned email, right? So you abandon a product in a cart, you follow up with that product that person left in their cart. For us, it makes most sense to not litter that email with more product. They were there for that product, you focus on that product, they'll convert on that product. If you start to add more links, more distractions. You're pulling away and detracting from that message. So once again, it's really important just to understand what you're trying to communicate. If there are multiple messages, then longer. If it's, we need this person to do this one thing, I would say isolate the story. So just totally depends. Optimize for mobile, you guys probably talk about this all the time. I'm sure you've seen emails on your mobile devices that look like that. I'm not sure how you're supposed to click on that, but everyone's getting better. Providers now are providing responsive templates. So at this point, or this stage of the game, there's not very many reasons you should be not going to responsive design. Just depends, I guess. It depends on what you want to do, but 80% of our kids open on a mobile device, so for us, it makes sense to make a mobile optimized design. Now, everybody should know the difference. Mobile optimized is just, it looks good on mobile. Responsive is depending on size of screen, it actually form fits. So just be aware of those little nuances. Strategy. This is the fun part. Not really. All right, strategy pillars. So frequency and content, segmentation, testing, tracking, and reporting. These are all part of the daily gig of an email marketer. Frequency and content. This is the idea that people can be turned off really easy, and managing the number of emails you send is very important. We are a very unique breed over at Zumiez. We, as I've mentioned, not only have a very small problem filling the funnel with new names, but we also have seen that our audience does not react negatively to ridiculous increases in frequency. So a couple years ago, my vice president kind of just said, well, what happens if we send them more than one a day? I was like, well, you don't want to do that. That's crazy talk. You protect your list, you know? He's like, well, just give it a shot. Well, I started sending 2 emails a day, and I started doubling my money. And I was like, all right, well, that's working. I didn't go up to 3, but then we got into a pretty sticky situation during, it was 2 years ago during Christmas, which is obviously peak season. We make a majority of the revenue for the year in the back half of the year, right? So I need to start cranking. So I was like, well, what if we add a third? You would be amazed, but unsubscribe rates did not go up, and people engaged almost consistently with morning, middle, and PM sends. So once again, it depends on who your audience is. I've sort of caveated that ours are kids, or so we think, because the noise is so loud and they just don't care, which is really good for us. So it's been working. But be careful. Don't burn out your lists. I will always caution an email marketer to protect your lists. It's going to cost more to get a new name than to keep one. So just be careful with that. Segmentation. This is the cool part about email marketing that not a lot of other parts of the marketing mix get to enjoy, which is segmentation based on any one of these particular factors or a combination of all of them. So you can get down to really granular segments that are hyper-personalized, and the people that receive them likely love them, but they went to 12 people. You got to find a way to scale that. So there's definitely, this is where we get into the idea of data paralysis. Do you have so much data that if you get so niche that you've essentially blown out any chance of the campaign being successful? So how do you scale it back? How do you make sure that the audiences you're reaching out to make most sense or are broad enough that the message lands? But if there's any chance at all possible when you guys have data to pivot off of, do it. People love a little layer of personalization in there. If you got a first name, you can use that. We feel we have a lot of grandmas in our database, so we don't personalize at all. We don't want to say like, hi Ethel, buy these Vans, because I'm not sure she's gonna. So that's a layer that we've taken off. But what we do is more for what brands have they bought? What styles have they bought? Historically, how much money have they spent with us? How many emails have they opened? All of those can add to create rich segments that we can use in email marketing. This is just the idea of when you have data, use it and keep that conversation going. So this is the idea of just like, oh, hey, we got generic marketing over here going to known prospect 1. Guy gets an email. We now know who this person is. So we get permission to email, and we hit them off with a welcome to Zumiez. They start to peruse the site. Now we're seeing that they are shopping Obey, and we're getting all this cool, rich data off of them, and then they get go into a cart and they leave. So, or they go to the cart and they purchase, and then now they're a hot customer, right? So how do we keep those people going? So we do an event triggered email, which is our using actually what they purchased to say, hey, you bought Vans. Other people who bought Vans also bought this. Highly effective, right? So we try to keep them in this cycle as long as possible. Naturally, they're gonna fall out, but once they engage again, you get them in this hot cycle. So I think the idea is more customer data you get, the more you can sort of feed your channels to make them a hot customer, and then give yourself more opportunity for success if you have to reach back out to them at a later date. Yeah?
At your retail stores, like when people are checking out, and they ask for like, can I get your email, are you part of our whatever program? Does that track back to see, like, say they were abandoned cart, can you see made purchase in store?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that data, we don't have a instantaneous pipeline, so I wouldn't be able to connect those dots instantaneously, but in a couple days, I'll be able to figure that out. Yeah. And this goes down to, if any of you guys are running your email programs or are going to be tasked with running your email programs or asked to chip in, knowing how your data is structured and knowing where it's coming from and how you're capturing it is really, really important. Know what you have at your advantage and is your data organized. And if you don't have organized data, see who you could talk to on your teams to figure out how to structure it. Because otherwise, they call them data lakes, but it's exactly what you think. It's just a huge puddle of erroneous data. You need to structure that for it to be useful. So just a side note on that. These are our shopping cart abandoned emails. This is an old creative, but this is just the idea. Someone leaves some stuff in their cart. We follow up with a very direct message. Hey, buy this now. If it's multiple products, we'll fill with their cart. These are extremely, extremely successful for us. They are 3,000% more effective than email marketing emails, or sorry, broadcast marketing emails. That's just the idea that you're gonna get more effective with relevancy and personalization. So it's the best you can do around that, yeah.
So would you rather have people purchase online or in your stores as a result of your ability to track?
Yeah, so we pride ourselves off being an omni-channel retailer. So that's just the idea that our stores are our web sales. Everything's connected. Although we do track web sales and store sales separately, we like to look at all our systems as one. So if they make a purchase in store, that data actually feeds to my email, and I do the same thing. I'll follow up to say, hey, thanks for visiting Alderwood Mall. You purchased these Vans. Here's some more Vans for you. So it depends on what kind of technologies also, right? So I'm not doing this, right? I'm not sending these. I set them up once, and then we have technology on our website that recognizes that somebody has abandoned a cart, and it follows up naturally. These are the best emails to have in your repertoire, guys. I set these things up once, never touch them for 6 months, and I make $1 million. That's what I'm talking about. Get those going if you have product side of your website. You work at Alaska. I'm sure you have follow-up things as well. I'm not sure what they would be, but it's maybe you were about to purchase a flight and you left halfway through. It's like, we noticed you were going to go to Hawaii. You know, here are some discounts or other places you could go. Yeah, so there's different ways, different businesses would use that differently, but these are highly effective for us from a product perspective. So wanted to share with you guys a little bit about what kind of engagement we're seeing from our perspective on marketing messages. So on broadcast campaigns and recurring automated campaigns, we're sitting about 13-10%. But as you can see with activity-based triggers, we get really, really way better metrics on who's opening, click rates get crazy, conversions get crazy. So this is all, as you get more relevant, this is the success you might be able to recognize. Testing for optimization. We look at copy, we look at creative, we look at CTAs. CTAs are calls to action. It's a button, buy this shirt. You would think that maybe the images speak for themselves, but sometimes it really helps to hold the customer hand and drive them through the purchase. Timing, frequency, segmentation, and audience. And then when I'm actually going through getting a review before it goes out to deployment, I'm looking at images, do they render? I'm looking at copy, does it show up when the image doesn't show? Do all the links not only open the web page, do they track correctly? Layout, does it look good? And is the landing experience going to the right place? For us, there's times when we're featuring a Vans hoodie, and then we drive to the men's shop front for hoodies, and it's nowhere to be seen. So we have to make that request to say, hey, merchants, we're going to be sending an email for this hoodie. Can you please move it up in the sort? So that's a level of coordination that I have to be aware of as well. So it's managing all expectations of the user experience from front to back.
How often are you running tests for optimization?
When I have a chance to breathe, it's probably a couple a month. It's probably a couple a month. Where we've netted on some of the things that we've tested due to the fact we haven't, so taking a step back, our testing learnings are very granular and sort of, take it with a grain of salt in that we weren't holding a control group, right? So you're testing two things side by side and you get very similar metrics back, so the test was really just neutral. And you can kind of continue to do that, and when you stop getting results that are, when you continue to get neutral results, you stop testing those. But yeah, for the things that we found that do work, like landing on a sale landing page versus sending them to the direct thing they link to. There's different things that we've definitely tried that work, but it's kind of few and far between because I'm sending 30 emails a week. So it's like a
How do you decide
bandwidth
what
thing.
to test if you're doing feedback too?
I think it's more for us just to understand like flats are on model, what works better, what are people reacting to? If we link to a different page, does it do the same thing? It's all nominal results sometimes, but sometimes we get some good wins. One would be women's swim. It's a difficult thing to sell online, right? It's a very sort of intimate experience, and those cuts and styles are all new and weird, and I don't know. But email found that showing it on model actually it wasn't as successful as showing flat shots. So it maybe in the mind of the consumer for an online purchaser, seeing it not on somebody who doesn't look like you was easier to envision like themselves in it. So those are some types of learnings that we've learned to run with. Tracking, we kind of went through this, right? I just understand how your engagement from my email tracked to the website and what you did on the website. I'll know what percentage of the people or traffic that hit our website bounced after how long, those types of things. All very important. And you really need a tracking tool like Google Analytics or other services out there that will do this for you. You're not going to do it on your own. Our tool does a really nice job of, this is what my reporting looks like. So when I want to see how a campaign performed, it pulls this up. It gives me a visual of what it did. And then it provides all the tracking, or all the engagement metrics across the board. What this doesn't do, shows me my Google Analytics data. So unfortunately, this is sort of just the top layer of what people did with my email. I have to go back in to say, this shoe sale did this much revenue, this much conversion, this much AOV. This is what this looks like in Google Analytics. So this is on a campaign level. We can see across the board. Let's see, we've got sessions, new users, page views, time on site transactions, and revenue. So it's really just the gamut of everything you'd ever want to know about your traffic. This is something our tool is able to do. It's called heat mapping. It shows what people are clicking on. It's a really easy way to validate that this didn't work, and that worked. So how do we use that in another email? How do we use this in another email?
What is this tool?
Oh, list track. So we use list track because it's a retail-specific email service provider. They go down to SKU level, so I can actually follow up with not only the style, but the size. Jennifer was talking about it. Depending on your business needs, there are 1,000 ESPs out there, and some do creative better, some do data better, some do responsiveness and ease of use better. It's just, you got to find the right mix that makes sense for you at the dollar, that makes sense for your budget. Just wanted to kind of show what part email plays in the overall revenue pie for us. It's a substantial chunk of money. I mean, this is, without this, we would be missing a third of kind of what we're doing on that side. And, or I should say a sixth, that's obviously not good math, a sixth. And it's a hard thing to sort of take away. So you got to make sure that you're doing it right, and at least having your communications be operational for your company. All you do is send email. I kind of talked about it. This is all the other stuff I do, right? So I do creative briefs from concepting the idea of what stories we're going to feature from the merchants who are buying the product. So buyers are like, hey, we got all this Nike product coming in June. You should focus on Nike for the month. So then I have to make sure in June I have 4 Nike stories throughout to make sure we're adhering to the brand requests.
How far ahead do you plan those? Do you know?
We're fast, so I'm only usually a week ahead. I have a plan for 2 to 3 weeks out, always changing. Specific requests, like locked down requests, about 3 days lead time.
Do you have
Yeah.
a big team?
I have one person who helps me manage my channel, and then shared resources of designers, and I'm the developer.
Do you guys have like a project management tool where like you...
Basecamp, yeah, we use Basecamp. It's the aggregator of all content, message, data. You know, it organizes all of our work between teams cross-functionally. So what I would do, and I can walk through this a little bit, but what I would do is I'd say, this is what I want this email to look like. I'd hand it over to my design team. Design team would crank it out, send it back to me. I'd code it, set it up, test it, deploy it, report back on it. And I do that for every email. So that's just sort of how that works out. So it goes from conception to creative design to approval and then to deployment. So this is just sort of the process by which I get an email out the door. You distill the top stories, you build briefs, you then create using photography that you've either done yourself or from the brand themselves. You get approval from all associated stakeholders, and then you send it out, see how it fares. This is just the difference of what my briefs would look like versus what actually gets pumped out at the end of the day. I just like to lean on my designers because I'm not a designer. I just sort of have it in my head and I say, make this, and they're like, yeah. And they make it all pretty, which is great. QA is just the idea of making sure everything works. So this is just a huge part of my job in making sure that everything's tracking correctly. Integrated marketing, so this would just be the idea that the consistency from the email to the landing page to the website, there's just fluidity between what's being promoted. We do things like this is Odd Future. I don't know if you guys are aware of the brand, but we do experiences where we got 20 kids to come out and play dodgeball with Taco and Jasper from Odd Future, and this is, we flew them all out, and it was a really fun event, but we do about 5 or 6 of these types of experiences a year. Just one example of non-product marketing that we do at Zumiez. Yeah.
One question. So when you have like an integrated marketing campaign, which parts are you creating?
Yeah.
Like, for example, like obviously the email, maybe the landing page, also the homepage, or how does that all get organized?
Yeah, the best part about these types of things is I'm only email on this, right? So there's a larger project at hand being managed by our brand marketing team, which does all of these events and anything sort of customer facing. And they'll design the concepts, they'll do the designs themselves, then there'll be a task in the project management tool that says, we need an email for this thing. So then they just assign me the email and I get that piece of this promotion. Everything else is handled by everyone else. But obviously there's a timing aspect and we all need to align on that. Here's what our emails could look like at any given time. As you can see, they go from short to long, depending on what we're looking at or what story we're trying to tell. So this is like for women's outfits. Women shop differently than men. They like to look at the whole kit. They want to see from top to bottom what's all included and how do I get either that piece or the whole thing. Guys, I think, are just a little bit more simple. We will go in and buy that one thing. We've seen that pretty historically. And here's a brand marketing email, right? So we're not promoting any products. We're not trying to divert their attention. It's like, hey, we got stickers to download. Come over and get them. So that's one of those opportunities where you don't want to detract. So channel strategy and how I manage all that's sort of building the roadmap, objectives of the channel. What are we trying to do this year? Is it revenue-based? Is it experiential? Is it data? How do all those play in? Are you going to beat what you did last year, or do you think you're going to scale back? Those are all bets I have to make that eventually, I have to pay for. You have mail optimization, figuring out when you do what you do, testing and strategy, technology and tools, cross-team, project management, and industry trends. These are all things I sort of need to be aware of to build our strategy and understand from our brand perspective where we want to go with email. I'm sure a lot of you didn't think an email marketer thinks about all this stuff, but hey, we do. Email trends for 2017, I should have said 2018. Automated is huge, big data and personalization, HTML5, video and email is going to be big this year. That's just the idea that there's not a lot of technology that lets you play video in your inbox. They're starting to come around, but it'll be if the ISPs allow it. They kind of dictate that whole conversation. Interactive emails, so it's the idea that if you, let's say they have hover states, so your cursor hovers over a particular creative and then it drops down a drop-down menu of sizes, or there's really cool things that you can actually start to do within the inbox that almost lends itself to a shopping experience inside the inbox, which is really, really cool. Excited about that. Now, will these be useful to every email marketer in the near future? Likely no, but at least you know that there's innovation happening. It's not a dead channel. It's something that's constantly evolving and moving. And that's where we end.